Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on the Cummins again in what is turned into basically just a full-on front-end restoration. We already got the wheel bearings done. We did the front U-joint on the drive shaft. Today we're going to be upgrading the steering, the tie rod, and the drag link. The drag link's just what goes from the pitman arm to the tie rod, and then the tie rod goes between the two tires, and that's just what makes the wheels turn when you turn the steering wheel. Not only are we going to be replacing the full steering, we're actually going to do an upgrade from the second gen, which is this body style Dodge, to the third gen, which is 2003 to 2012. Basically, the tie rod is 100 times thicker than it, which with these larger tires, they're 33s. The larger tires take a little bit more effort to turn, puts a lot more stress on the steering. So with a thicker tie rod, be a lot less stressful on all the steering components. Should give you a more like confident steering wheel. Let's go check out the parts real quick because they're really nice. I'll show you what I paid for them. I bought them a while ago. It wasn't too recent, but just getting around to installing it. Show you the part number. I got it as a full kit rather than just the steering components. That includes the steering stabilizer, a pitman arm, which we're not going to use or need. Now this upgrade should be a full bolt-on for this truck because it's a 2001 and a half. The way you know it's a half is because it has rear disc brakes. 2001, 2002 trucks, they had a bunch of upgraded knuckles and upgraded steering box, upgraded pitman arm. That makes the upgrade just a bolt-in. For the earlier second gen trucks, however, you do have to remount the pitman arm and you have to remount the knuckles, which isn't too much work. The tools to do it are a little expensive. There is some fabrication required, basically. With this truck, though, it should be just a straight bolt-on. I've never done one, though, so here's hoping that that's how it is. So let's go check out the parts and see what they look like. So I want to point out the truck's been pretty dirty in the last couple of videos, and as is commonly the rule, I finally got the truck washed. And what happens? It snows, it rains. We're still dealing with winter up here in the Northeast. Thank God it's not as cold as it was yesterday. I think it's like in the 30s or something, so it's a lot easier to work in this weather than the last video. All right, so here's the parts that we're working with. This is the drag link. Goes to the from the pitman arm, which is on the steering box, down to the tie rod, which is this big bar, and then these tie rods, the tie rod ends go into each one of the knuckles to turn the wheels. This bar alone has to be at least like double the size of the tie rod that comes on this truck. This is a steering stabilizer. This mounts from this is going to mount from this pin over to the axle. This should just bolt right up. I haven't really seen anything written about this bolting up, so we're going to sort of find out as we do this. But this is part of the kit. The other part of the kit is a pitman arm, which connects here and then to the steering box. That part does not fit the second gen. I actually took the pitman arm off once and tried that pitman arm onto this box, and there's no way that it'll fit. So we are going to be reusing this one. The end for this tie rod, it should fit in that pitman arm just fine. There shouldn't be a problem. It should just be all bolted. It also comes with these new locking nuts for each one of the bolt ends. All three of them, get those. And it's basically everything you need for the kit. You can get just the arms, $150 cheaper, give or take. Let me just show you, I'll show you the part number and the price for it. This is just called the Steering Drag Link Damper Pitman Arm Upgrade Full Kit Mopar. The price on it was $437. So I just hold that up to the camera really quick. You can't read the part number. The part number on it is 52122362KIT. The place I bought it from was actually called Haddad Auto Parts on Amazon. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and jack up the front end, get the wheels off. It's a pretty simple procedure, really. It's only a couple nuts and bolts and hammers and air tools, but we'll get it up, get the tires off, get the old one out. I'll make sure to put the old one next to this one so you guys can see how large of a difference it's going to be. But yeah, let's get at it. Okay, so now that we got that wheel off, here you can see this is just the cotter pin that locks this nut for the tie rod into the knuckle right here. This is the tie rod. You could already tell if you remember just from before, look how thin this bar is compared to how that other bar was. Back here, you might be able to make out where the pitman arm is. So this big bar right here, the drag link goes into that. Same thing, just a cotter pin and a nut. Pretty sure all the nuts are 21s. This is the adjuster sleeve. This is what helps you actually set your alignment. It changes the distance in between the wheels, so it can bring them both in together like this, or it could push them away from each other. So all we're gonna have to do is on each side, we're gonna take this cotter pin out, pull this nut up to get these tie rods out of this knuckle. I always see people use crazy things like pickle forks, which go in here and you hammer them, and all you really need is a good like 5-pound dead blow hammer. You just hit it right here. You can actually see I've pulled this out before. It's a little bit rusty at this point, but you just hit there and the shock around the tie rod will actually just eventually pop the tie rod out. It's generally not a big deal. People are sometimes afraid to just hit things with hammers, but in this situation, it's the quickest and easiest way to do it. Since we won't be reusing this, we can probably get away with hitting this stud too, but in general, that's not the way that you want to do it. So we're gonna go ahead, we'll get the air gun, get this cotter pin out, get the nut off. We'll knock this side off. We'll go to the other side, knock that side off. Then we're basically done. We just have to get the pitman arm nut off, which, you know, we'll change the camera angles for that. But yeah, it should be on the ground in no time, really. This is a pretty quick upgrade. Okay, so one thing that we did wind up forgetting is to disconnect. This is a steering stabilizer right here. This is where it connects to the axle. 15 millimeter on this side, I believe an 18 millimeter on that side. We forgot to disconnect that, which is gonna keep this tie rod stuck to the axle. The steering stabilizer connects down here at the tie rod. So we're gonna go ahead and take this bolt out. Should just be a straight through bolt, and then we'll pull it off the pitman arm. So as you can see, we got the old stuff out and I lined it up next to the new stuff. You can already see the difference. I'll hold them closer together. But first, let's just go over what the real difference is between this kit. So now this is the factory setup. And you can see here on the drag link portion, it goes all the way to the knuckle on the tie rod end. And then the tie rod for the other side connects into the middle of that drag link. This is called the inverted Y setup. And the new upgrade system from the 2003s is called a T setup. And the difference, obviously, is the drag link only goes to this tie rod. The tie rod goes from this wheel all the way over to the other wheel. Obviously, besides visible differences, the key factor between T and Y link is since this is connected directly to the wheel and then the other end is connected to the pitman arm, what happens is when this wheel takes an impact or some type of a side load, a pothole, could be a variety of different things, that impact goes directly back to the pitman arm, which connects to the steering box, which goes directly to your steering wheel. So you're gonna feel that. It's gonna cause a sudden change in your steering angle and the toe on that tire. On this setup, what happens is when that wheel takes an impact, rather than transferring directly to the steering box, most of that is gonna transfer to the other wheel. And since you're holding the steering straight, it should absorb most of it and give you a much more like confident steering wheel. Now, the only downside to the T-style is generally the bar and this joint right here will have a little bit of roll, which can cause slop. With these bars being so thick too, there should be no flexing, so it should give you a pretty accurate feel to your steering. One other thing that I didn't think of is for where the stabilizer on the new kit mounts, we're gonna have to get this nut off. It should hopefully fit the new stabilizer. Otherwise, we're gonna have to find a nut for that. This is probably gonna be like a 15 or a 17 or something like that. So now you can see here, this thing's practically the size of like my thumb. This is like a thumb and a half. So this bar is a lot thinner. Gonna give you a lot more opportunity for flex. Gonna put a lot more strain on the steering box. Just because it's inverted Y, it puts a lot more strain. But then with those larger tires that we have also, it's gonna put a lot more strain. So now another great thing about the T setup versus the Y setup is when it comes down to alignments. Now, I know most of you guys are probably not going to be doing your own alignments when you do this, but alignment is going to be necessary. Before you install it, try to line it up as best you can, get it close, but you're going to need an alignment. On this setup, you use this adjuster sleeve, and that'll adjust the toe on your one wheel. Then you use the adjuster sleeve down there, and that'll adjust the toe on the other wheel. And it can get a little bit messy, it's a little bit difficult, but with the T-style, it's much easier. The adjuster down there, all that does is it either pulls your wheels closer together, which will give you toe in, or pushes your wheels farther apart, which will give you toe out. And basically you just look for about 0 toe. Sometimes you want a little bit negative just for the ride characteristics. All this adjuster does is centers your steering wheel. It's much easier just to set your toe and then you get your steering wheel straight. This one's a little bit of a mess going back and forth, back and forth. I definitely prefer to do this. I'm gonna be doing my own alignment. We have access to the shop, so we'll do just a separate video to show how we do it. Let's go ahead, we'll start getting this thing in. We'll grab this nut off too, and then we'll start trying to move it in. So you saw me take that steering stabilizer off of the tie rod. Unfortunately, the kit doesn't come with a nut for that, and the old one wasn't going to be reused. It was a fine thread, whereas I needed a coarse thread. Luckily, I managed to find a nut that works. I am gonna need to replace that nut though, because it's part of something else that we're gonna put on the truck. So I'm definitely gonna have to find another nut, go to the hardware store or whatever. But luckily we do have that. We do have a nut for that. We're gonna be able to bolt that right on and we won't have any problems there. I also went ahead and I tried to line up the tie rod as best as I could to the tie rod that came out of the car to try to get the wheels as straight as possible. The alignment that we had on was pretty beat anyway. It needed to be done. That's why we went ahead and just changed out all the steering components while we're at it. Let's throw those bars back underneath the truck, get it all lined up, and I will see you guys when we're basically wrapping it up. All right guys, so there you go. That's our whole steering installed. We had the stabilizer in here, that's 3rd gen. Got the 3rd gen tie rod, the 3rd gen drag link, right onto that pitman arm. Now one thing to keep in mind is this vehicle has, I believe it's a 3-inch leveling kit on the front. It's the Carly full spring leveling kit. So that does change the distance here to here. I've heard of some people having problems with this part of the drag link hitting this arm. You can imagine this being a lot lower. It's going to be pretty close. The best solution to that probably would be to trim this, the hex head portion. You don't really need that, so you could trim all of that off and leave just the threads. Probably the best solution for that. Also, don't mind the oil leak. We're going to get around to that. I fixed most of it, but we do have some that I'm going to do on video, so I'm just waiting for that. I did have a much worse oil leak at one point, which made the majority of this mess. My crank seal went out. The crank pulley actually failed, which tore up the crank seal, which dumped like all the oil out. Pretty much what's stuck all over here at the moment. I never got a chance really to clean up. It's really hard to get diesel oil off, but we do have other leaks that we're gonna get around to fixing eventually, get them on video and get them up for you guys. So the only thing we have left to do now is to tighten up these adjuster sleeves. That's not a big deal. They're like a 15 millimeter nut. So before we take this thing off the jack stands, we do want to try to get it, you know, we eyed it up at first, but we do want to try to get it as close as possible to having the tires straight. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to do that. The first thing that you want to start with, for me at least, is starting on the right side, the passenger side. It's far enough away from the adjuster, but all you got to do is get one tire straight, and then you make sure that that tire stays straight, and then you pull the other one in or out, whichever way it's got to go. So first you want to just give it a good look. This tire, you can see, or you should be able to see, is pointing out from the vehicle a little bit. You can see how it's pointing to the right a little bit. You want it to be more straight than that. I don't know how well the angle is going to show up on the camera. So we're going to go ahead and make this wheel straight just by nudging the tire, or at least as close to straight as we can. But if you look down the length of the car, you could sort of see, like, that looks pretty straight. But yeah, I think we're gonna call that straight enough. So then we're gonna go over to the other side. Now, once you look at this side, you can see that it's definitely pointing out, just like the other side was before. From up top, it might be more noticeable. You can see that it's now pointing out, like, to the left, away from the vehicle. So now that we know that that tire is pointing outwards, what we're gonna wanna do is, on this adjuster sleeve, we're gonna thread it so that it pulls these two threads closer together. I'll have to look exactly, see what way we're gonna turn it. The easiest thing that I use to do it is just a regular pipe wrench. Gives you good grip on there. And what you want to do really is use the top part of it to grab into there's like a slit in between the sleeve where it's split in half. Try to grab that, and that'll make it turn easier. But you can just look at the threads and figure out which way it has to go to pull it closer. And then you just keep referencing back and forth to make sure that the passenger side wheel is straight, and keep going back and forth. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. It'll be good to take it off the jacks and everything, and the car's basically done. They're about as straight as we're gonna get them for now, just by eye. So now for you guys, after that step, the only thing you'd have left to do is put the car down on the ground and then check out your steering wheel, see how centered it is. If it's off by a lot, the only thing you would have to adjust is the sleeve on the drag link that goes from the pitman arm down to that tie rod. You adjust it the same way that you adjusted that tie rod. As you pull it together, the wheel turns to the right. As you separate them, the wheel turns to the left. I actually took a look at our wheel. Our wheel's actually close enough that it's probably not gonna bother me until I get it on the rack. So stay tuned to that video. I'll show you exactly how we get it dead on. That's pretty much gonna wrap up the job. Got all that steering in, got the wheels straight as we possibly can. Not much left to do. For those of you that have made it to the end and are already subscribed, thank you so much for the support. Really appreciate it. It's very hard getting one of these channels started. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the content, putting to work some of the things that you've seen on the channel already. We've done a bunch of stuff on this Dodge, and we've got a bunch more. And then, like I always say in the videos, I do have another car coming. It's a little bit of a secret. I think you're gonna enjoy it. For those of you that made it this far and aren't subscribed, I would love for you guys to please hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed what you saw, if you found it informative, if you just personally enjoy me, if you enjoy this horrible Northeast snowy weather and seeing people work in it. I would love to have you guys subscribe, and if anyone that enjoyed this video just hits that like button, really helps out the channel and really helps get those videos out to everybody that could need them. Other than that, guys, have a great day. Enjoy hopefully better weather than what I have here, and I will catch you guys in the next video.